Yeah, so the formal practice was pretty good, except like now it's become like a running theme. Sometimes on Friday or like today, I'll probably sit a little bit like today, but I missed 1 day of practice on Friday. But other than that, I think it's been pretty productive. Just repeatedly taking that breath. So sometimes I stand now because sometimes there's like a little bit of dullness because I'm tired. But when I stand, it's actually surprisingly good. Um, and so I would say the formal practice is a huge success because it just feels nice to take like a deep breath. In terms,
Actually,
Mhm.
let me add this, that
Mm,
military has known that
mhm.
for a very, very long time and practice it. That's why guards always stand for guard duty.
Oh,
And that, in fact, if you look at movies
mm,
and see that the guard is actually sitting in a guardhouse,
mhm.
they're the ones who are the more vulnerable.
Oh yeah, I mean they just get like strangled silently or like
They're the ones who
taken.
get strangled silently, but the guys who were standing out and watching and own round and whatnot like that and watching what's going on, they're the ones who are really hard to
Exactly.
sneak up on.
Yeah, and
Yes,
so,
standing meditation has a value to it.
yeah, so I think standing was pretty good. Standing works. So I guess like my question is, does walking work? Because sometimes when I sit, I can sometimes feel like a little bit of restlessness, like a small impulse that says like, yo, just like wiggle just like a little bit, like or something like you try kind of like thoughts that say like, oh, kind of wiggle, or like wiggle a little bit, or oh, why don't we like adjust like a little bit or something. But I'm just curious, like, should I also do like some like a bit of walking thrown in there as well, or should I just like stand? I mean, I can stand. It's probably a good lesson in mindfulness, right? Just to come back. But mm-hmm,
Well,
mm-hmm,
being living in New York, you probably don't ride around much in a limousine. You don't have a limousine of your own,
yeah, yeah, I just
which
walk.
which means that it more than likely you do quite a lot of standing and
Mhm.
walking during the day.
Yeah, yeah.
All
Mm-hmm.
right, which means that this is an actual excellent opportunity for practice.
Oh yes, I always do that. Like when I walk, I always already practice. Yes. Mm-hmm.
Right, and there is also a quality with walking
Mm-hmm.
is that we have to be much more in the here now. We can sit and just be completely in daydreams.
Mm-hmm.
But if that happens while we're walking, we're going to run into something,
Oh,
which
we're
is
gonna.
quite funny when it happens, but people do.
Mm, that's
They'll
right.
step in a hole or they'll run into a sign or they'll do all kinds of things hurting themselves because they're not paying attention where they're going.
Mm.
But that also is rare, which means that most people are at least paying attention to what they're doing while they're walking.
Mm,
It's
mm.
required.
That's true. That's true. Right. Um. So yeah. So then I guess like the formal practice is pretty good. Like I think it's going. Um. Informally, so the informal practice, the generosity practice. I'm just trying to like think back to see if I actually gave anybody any dollars. I don't think I gave anybody any dollars yet this week actually. I don't think so. Um yeah, just trying to like remember because like sometimes like the weekdays kind of get hazy. Uh no, I don't think so. So this
Uh-huh.
week has been kind of light on the generosity practice. Then in terms of any other like particularly yes, so basically we're talking about um, chains of like thought, right? Like noticing the chains of. Okay, have a good night. All right, yeah, yeah. So I was noticing about like the chains of thoughts, and they're. I mean, it's always like those like three themes. It's either like central desire or past or future. I really like did not really see anything else because when I say past or future, future also means like those non-existent ones where you just kind of make up some stories or you kind of just put yourself in like a imaginary conversation or this and that. Um, so one thing that I sometimes think about is yeah. So I remember last time you spoke a little bit about conceit, right? That when you like conceit is more I guess like damaging, because for things like restlessness, you can easily identify that you are restless, but for conceit, it may not show until far down the line.
Exactly.
So I just reflected on that a little bit today, and one thing that my mom tells me is, she was like, yeah, sometimes you may not mean it, like when you say things or talk about it, like you really just want to explain or like talk about things, but people interpret you as um, kind of, you try to explain in like a patronizing sort of way. There's not really any like recent examples, but this is something that, remember, like that came up like 3-4 months ago when I was talking to you about my cousin and how she got emotional, or thought that I was, and said that I was patronizing when I was, and she asked me the question like, do you suffer when you feel sad and things like that. So I just I just reflected on that today, and I was like, maybe there are things like this, and I'm just not picking up on. So maybe that's something we could explore. And I guess in terms of the only other thing that's been going on is, so competition, very useful, that I've been looking out for it in many cases. I think it's really helpful because treating everybody as a Zen master really does take the edge or the aversion away out of a lot of situations that I run into.
Excellent report. I'm glad to hear that.
And then I guess like the only thing left is, I guess probably at work now on my new team. So I still I just do my own thing. I'm not sure, but like I do my own thing at like what I used to do like on my old team. So I like roll in at 8:30, leave at 9. Leave at 5. But sometimes I notice like people coming in at like 9:10, but they don't leave until like 6 or 6:30. I'm like, oh man, I'm the only person like leaving at 5. So sometimes I try to like bump it to like 5:15. But I also do notice like so much tension and like fear. Like when I leave, I was like, oh god, like, I was like, oh. So that's kind of what's been going on.
Okay, here's something that you can do with that.
Mm,
Make sure
mm,
that when you leave in the day,
mm,
that there will be someone there
mm-hmm.
that you want to say goodbye to. It
Oh
may
yes,
be a boss or a team lead or
so I say
some
good night when I leave.
person.
Yeah.
Yeah, you always want to announce that you're going,
Mm-hmm.
and you can read their face. If they disagree with the fact that you're going, then you can start looking at it.
Mm-hmm.
But if they're okay with it, you're going, then why don't you give yourself an okay that you're going also?
I would say like probably when I say like good night to them, they don't really like. I can't really like when I try to read their face. Like there's not really much. It's not like that they agree or disagree. They're just looking at their monitor and like, oh, they're like, oh, good night, or like they'll just look like briefly at me, good night, and like that.
In other words, they don't really care. They're not even giving you an expression.
Oh, understood, understood. I mean, if they really cared, they would have pulled me aside and
If
said
they
like,
cared, if they were disapproving, it would show in their face.
oh, okay, like I would know, or
You
like eventually
well,
know.
you would know if you saw it.
Okay, or
But you're not
eventually.
seeing it.
Uh,
You're thinking about how they might feel without actually watching how they're feeling.
Gotcha. I mean, eventually I'll find out, like, if they actually have issues. Either way, if I still can't see it, I'll find out. They'll pull me aside and say, look, we can't do this. Like, we're rushing or whatever. Okay. I guess that's
Exactly.
understood.
Yeah. And in fact, you're actually creating that time for them to pull you aside when you go up to them intentionally to say, see you tomorrow.
Understood. Oh, yeah. Because, like, for example, like on Friday when
Or you can go so far also, if it's a boss or somebody, you can actually do it in the sense of by your leave, sir, by asking the question, is there anything that you need before I go?
Right. Oh, that's a good point, because on Friday when I left early, when I was packing up, one developer said, hey, can you just make this change? So I just made it before I left. Oh, more unnecessary suffering over here. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, because I feel like a lot of one thing that really has not that I have not really, I guess, like budged is I can always imagine there is this, oh, actually not imagine, I can always feel like there is a certain amount of fear that I still have, that the mind still has sometimes when it comes to, I guess, like the workplace. There's always a part that's kind of like fearful, like, oh man, like what's everybody like thinking? Like, oh man, like, there's always some kind of, I guess I inherited a part of this from the Zen master, because he used to, he like, he's the kind of person who like will just like talk, oh no, you gotta like stick it to the man, or like fight the system or whatever. But when it comes time for him to actually do the job, he's the type of person that like that is boss fearing and will do the job, and is really boss fearing. And so I feel like, yeah, there is a certain amount of I guess like fear sometimes, or like tension that I can see in the workplace. I guess that's like the next thing to.
That's what I was about to point out, that while you bought your share of it from your dad, the Zen master, everyone else in that office has bought their share of that same thing, and all of you come together in that office, each one of them holding that understanding that the office is fearful, that it's dangerous, that it's competitive, that it's got all of that stuff going on with it. And that milieu is in everybody's mind. That's why it's especially valuable for you to be friendly with the people that are there, so that they don't see you as part of that competition.
Right.
To change that competition from within the organization into having the whole organization on the same team, competing against something that's on the outside, perhaps someone you never see or met. That was what the whole idea of Zen and the art of donuts was all about.
Yeah.
Was to continue to create that friendly atmosphere that is so rare in America and so very rare in New York.
Oh, gotcha. Yes, because it's like a part of me. There is a fear, I guess, a part of me that, remember we were talking about way back, that how like my existence is dependent on so many things. And I guess the most striking example is probably, like, say, the salary, or like, for example, like the health benefits that the company offers. And that is probably, I guess, at least if it's not but it's also probably one of the, I guess, like the main factors that keep me tied, right, bound, like in like sometimes, right, occasional anxiety or fear, right, because my existence is dependent on basically stuff like this, because I'm living here, like in New York City.
Well, I fully agree with you about the salary. That's really the issue. About the health care, I'm not so sure about. Because you're so young, you're not even using it. I mean, you're not nearly dependent upon it. You don't take 10 different pills a day and go to the doctor every week. You don't do that yet.
No. So I actually...
I hope you don't.
Well, unfortunately, yeah. Well, here's the unfortunate part. So I actually do, well, not like 10 pills, but my needs like certain medications to keep it under control. Also, I will devolve back into that part where my skin will basically break out everywhere, and it got so bad. So this is like before I had met you. But, like, there were days where basically I wouldn't be able to sleep, like, because the eczema gets so bad where I would sleep for an hour, wake up, sleep for an hour, wake up, sleep for an hour, wake up, and it gets to the point where you just can't turn your neck because the whole thing is just like everywhere. So that was this is like back in like 2016. So this is like,
you're more or less free from that eczema now
because of the medication.
Huh?
Like temporarily. The problem is that the medication works temporarily, and then it will come back, and you need to basically continually suppress it. And so I think that's also basically this is basic.
Well, suppression of eczema is a skill to be developed. And I will be honest with you, I would in general not recommend to a student to stop taking any medication that is prescribed by a doctor. That's not my job.
Understood.
However, I have had numerous reports from students that after they start practicing meditation and mindfulness, start practicing to clean out the mind and keep the mind free from suffering, that they don't need what pills they were taking, and they start experimenting with taking fewer pills and taking it less often, but always making sure that they monitor how pills actually work. That's one thing that, in fact, almost no one does. They get a prescription from the doctor. They just take the pills according to the prescription, where the first thing they should do is go to Google and look up what they're given, why they're taking it, etc., like that, knowing all of the various benefits and side benefits, and then experiment with the medicine to see what, in fact, effect it actually does have.
Okay, I should probably experiment more. I suspect what's actually happening is actually my my intestinal system. It's probably been damaged from years of bad eating when I was a child. Oh, hell, now we go back. I love to eat lots of sweet stuff. I wouldn't eat my vegetables. Now it's really funny because now when I look back, I was like, wow, what a dumb kid. But anyway, that's a different story. Let's not go back.
Every kid is a dumb kid.
And so now I know better. But definitely, yeah, I think it's because it's like my body is weakened and damaged from years of bad eating habits. I think that's part of why the eczema has come back. And I've actually had it since probably as long as I can remember. Back in first grade, second grade, I still have it. But anyway, yes, I think this is something I can work on. Maybe since the medicine is working, I'm living on borrowed time, so I can probably use some of that time to change. But anyway, that's not the point of the thing. But yeah, anyway, the point here is, yeah, like the existence is dependent on these things, and as such, I guess it's the perfect thing illustrating where the anxiety and the dukkha can arise because of the dependency. At least that's what I'm learning right now.
All right. You do at least intellectually know, though, that you do not need the salary, and you do not need exactly that salary's connection with an insurance policy. That we go back to the 4 requisites. What you actually need is adequate housing, adequate clothing, adequate food, and proper adequate food. In this case, the food's got to be actually adequate, and not just in quantity, but in quality also. And this ever difficult one for the Americans, getting enough medical attention. Okay, so that enough and proper, adequate medical attention is something that it's hard to hit the mark. It's hard to get the right balance or to hit the middle path. Then what we find is people not getting the medication or not taking care of themselves. And on the other side, we're overly medicated, taking well too care of ourselves. We're all hypochondriacs, all too much dependent upon the medical profession, which is quite happy to make us dependent because that's where all of their wealth comes from.
Right.
And so we need to find a way of balancing these 4 requisites so that you can come to peace with yourself.
So I guess maybe my rational...
Here's a question for you. Never mind the health insurance, because let us say it this way: whatever eczema medicines that you are prescribed and you take, you tell me what they are and I'll send them to you, because I don't need a prescription here in Thailand.
Oh, yeah?
You get the stuff and I'll mail it to you. So now that you've got your medicine, the whole issue of medications are off the table for just a moment, just for this idea, okay? So the next thing is to figure out how, here's a question. I used to ask myself this a long time ago. How much money do I need to save up before I feel secure to quit the job?
Oh, I see.
Without having to worry about getting another job, that I can quit a job.
That's okay.
Now that has to do with the fact that I was in and out of the United States a number of times, or in and out of Western world actually several times, in order to make money. But the intention was to keep as much as I could that was made, spend as little money as I could, and therefore I can quit the job easily and then I can take off. So what I wound up doing was doing contract work. I've had a number of contracts that range from 6 months to 18 months, but when the contract is over, so am I.
That's a really
In fact, I spent a year in Saudi Arabia, and that was among the last 3 years.
That's a really good question, because sometimes I do think about this, because I've considered this, because like what will happen to my parents, what will happen. So right now we're renting, but yeah, like what will happen? I'm just like, oh gosh, it's like so many. I know exactly what you mean. Like sometimes I have that feeling. I just want to like cut. Like I just don't want any of this. But like
Well, remember the original question was, what do you need to feel secure?
I mean,
and as soon as you open that door, all you see is these insecurities. Oh, mom and rent and all of that kind of stuff. And these are insecurities. What we're looking for is how can you feel in your own mind or your own heart? How can you feel secure without taking any of these other things into consideration? Because if you do take them into consideration, it's going to be a source of anxiety.
I mean, honestly, like, if you ask me, like, if you ask me now, like, how do I feel secure? Oh, I just like take a breath. Nope, everything's perfectly fine now. So I mean, like right now, like if you ask me, like right now, yeah, this is like I'm pretty secure right now. I'm just talking to you. I'm pretty secure right now.
Remember this moment. Remember it well, because there'll be moments when you don't feel like this.
Right.
Remember that you can feel secure.
Yeah. I mean, right now, yeah, totally. Like, yeah, this is pretty good.
But at 5 o'clock, when it's time to go home, all of a sudden you don't feel secure.
Gotcha. I know what must be done now.
Okay, exactly right. Let's start working on that, because that is the restlessness. That is the anxiety.
I feel like, yeah, I think I've largely I think that's like the next thing to look at.
Now, working with students, what we've come to understand is that there are some very definite situational issues that have to do with the bring up of anxiety. One of them, and in fact one of the most important ones, is about eating and eating food. That's a source of anxiety. Let me explain to you the very deep historical reasons behind that. Look at the way that dogs will attack a carcass. And what they'll do is each dog will grab a hunk of meat and bone or whatever like that, and then carry it off. Modern dogs do that the same way. If you put an item in the bowl of a dog, even if that dog lives alone, if he can eat it out of the bowl, he'll eat it out of the bowl. If he cannot eat the item because it's too big, he will pick it up, put it in his mouth, and go hide. He'll, like burying bones. This is the whole thing behind that mentality. Humans have it too. And it boils down to that eating food and having food in a predatory world is dangerous.
I see.
And that's what we're now cattle who are grazing and munching on grass. That's not our heritage. Our heritage is through primates. Our heritage is much more like dogs. Kind of predatory, and we have been and have a history of being predatory with each other, trying to take this sustenance away from each other, and sustenance in general. In fact, money is more of a tie with food and substance than it is sexuality. Okay, that's our real procreation, or that's our real substance, is eating food, and you can see how instinctual it is. And this is what gives rise to family squabbles at dinner time. That's the most tense time. You looked up and say, "Oh yeah, now I get it."
No, like totally. Like the Zen master is sometimes not content with, sometimes we give him like, because like sometimes like Oh man, I can't even begin to see how many show you how many lessons he's been teaching, in like discontent and things like that. Um, it's like the more he just sits at home, he just finds. Even my mom is picking up on this, that he just finds more and more things to be unhappy about. It's like, oh, I cleared this up, and now you guys like came over here and like bought this microwave and all that stuff and put it here, and it's like, no, you should like the shoes should, like shouldn't be like this. They should be, um, like put up like neatly against the rack and things like that. And at that whole time, I was just like, yep, it's the guy who walks into the like walks into the room full of the clothes and like finds a problem. And I'm just like, oh yeah, okay. Like I was like, wow, okay. Uh, and the other thing is, yeah, like he's just like I guess like it's the thing about money. It's just like, oh, like I want some like it's really funny because like he'll say, oh, like I'd like some money to spend, but like when you give it to him, he just kind of doesn't kind of wants to take it, but like maybe there's some ego involved, where it's like when you give it to him, give him a couple hundreds, oh that's just that's like loose change or something like that. That's like the rough Chinese like transaction. I'm sorry, translation. Oh, it's loose change. Like, it can't save my life. And I'm just like, all right, all right, and like practicing generosity. But it's interesting that you mentioned this because it's like a lot of the squabbles that I can see. I guess like it divides people. It divides people. I'm not saying that I'm like a saint and I'm like generous all the time, because I have certainly seen these selfish impulses come in my own mind as well when I deal with money. But I think you hit on a point here. It's so divisive because it directly, I guess, like you said, ties so strongly to that subjective sense of, okay, with the money I can do what I want, or I can do this, and so that's why it's so divisive, I guess. That's so true.
In a way, it's I can feel my belly.
Understood.
Right? It's really strange like that we equate working and having a job and having a salary and money in general.
Mm-hmm.
The first time that you mention not having the money, they'll say, oh, I'll starve or I won't eat. You can see how directly related in the mind that money and eating are.
Right.
And you can also now see why real food and real eating is a major source historically from the instinctual old programming. That's the place where we have tensions and anxieties pop up, is around food. It's part of our human nature.
Gotcha. Right. So the point here is that's like it's not enough that we have something to eat. It's like we gotta stash it and like hide it because it's dangerous.
Got to protect it. And think about the dog who picks up the bone or the big hunk of meat out of his bowl and goes and takes it someplace
and like eats it in the corner or
and
something.
Wherever he takes it, he'll do his best to hide so that you can't see. And you're the one who put it in the bowl for him.
Yeah. It's really funny. Yeah.
It is funny, but that whole idea about this is mine, and you'll see it with kids taking food off of each other's plate. And then someone in the family gets really angry about it, or they can fight about all kinds of other things. And what happens is that families come then to the dinner table with this extra built-in anxiety on top of all the anxieties they brought in with the day, and this is the time that they start unloading on each other.
Gotcha. Right. Gotcha. Yeah. There is stuff.
There are things to do about food. Some students say, yes, I understand it exactly. That as soon as I get a plate of food in front of me, I can feel this tension inside. Oh. Have you ever had that experience?
Yes. Like if it's your favorite food, you want to get some before somebody else takes it. So you're just like on the ready. Like when everybody sits down, you're getting that like big piece and you're going to put it on your plate. And that's the end of it.
Be aware of that anxiety and recognize that some people have it with every plate full of food, or sometimes even every mouthful of food, they feel that anxiety. But some people, they only do it over certain or special foods or the ones that they like. But that food anxiety is there in everyone.
Yeah, it's that. I definitely had it. I've definitely had it because it's that like I want to get a piece of that like kind of mentality. It's like I gotta have like that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. That's
Oh.
exactly also what fits in with that statement that you've heard. You probably heard it all your life.
Mm-hmm.
There's a shorthand version of it called Tanstaffel.
Oh, what is it? No, I don't know what that is.
There ain't no such thing as a free lunch.
Oh, yes, yes, understood.
No doubt heard that. Okay, that was I forgot who wrote the book. It wasn't an astronaut book, but a science fiction book by the name of The Moon is a Harsh Mistress. I think I even told you the story where they used computers as an object of trajectory so that they could just simply catapult moon rocks
Oh,
off of the surface of the moon
uh,
with the trajectories calculated by the supercomputers that was already been put on the moon by the basically the wardens and prison masters, and the prisoners took over the prison. So now they use catapults to very accurately toss rocks, moon rocks, back at the planet Earth in order to gain their freedom. It's
oh,
war.
war.
Okay, but that phrase "Tanstaffel," or "there ain't no such thing as a free lunch," comes from that novel. Very interesting
Very.
about being able to calculate the trajectory of catapulted rocks so that they'll actually hit a particular city.
Gotcha. I see.
So anyway, back to
Mm,
there ain't no such thing as a free lunch
mm,
is not true. That is only in the case when there is no compassion, no teamwork, and everything is competitive,
mm-hmm.
including the food that you had already earned and owned, and now it's free to you, but somebody else wants it, tries to get it. So we feel that we've got to protect everything. It becomes protectionistic.
Mm,
And this comes out of that tension or anxiety
mm,
that the Buddha calls restlessness, and that we sometimes label stress. And Ajahn Tanisaro actually translates all of dukkha as merely stress. He
yes.
boils it down to it's just all down to anxiety.
Oh, understood. Right, right. That basic anxiety.
Hmm. Now, the second time
Mm,
that restlessness comes up is when we're out traveling. The Buddha talks about that. In fact, he gives in Sutta number 39 the story about being out on a long journey with all your possessions, and you finally make it to the rest stop, or you finally make it home, and now you can feel relieved.
oh, okay, got it. Is
Okay?
like that
While
getting
we're
lost feeling or something?
pardon?
Like that getting lost or like wandering like feeling? Is that like different? Kind of like the.
Yeah, this is different in the sense that while, okay, let me explain it to you this way. From time to time, it's necessary for me to go over to Koh Samui because of one thing or another. The last time was because I went to pay respect to Achan Po and have a nice long conversation. So here I get on this boat, which happens to be a high-speed catamaran that has 300 passengers on it, and I'm basically the only passenger that gets on without being overly burdened with any baggage. There's some people are carrying a big bag behind them, having a backpack on their back and a front pack on their front, and they're trying to maneuver gangplanks and all of that kind of stuff. And not only that, but they tend to travel in gangs or groups together.
Wow.
And so there's all of this baggage. And almost all of the tensions and anxieties has got to do with dealing with the baggage. That just walking and going is okay, but if you're walking and going and carrying 100 kilos or dragging part of the 100 behind you, now life is not so easy. And not only that, but you can't just stop and go to the toilet.
Oh, I see what you mean.
That's
So
why
like,
they travel in groups, is so that they can leave one another to guard all their valuable possessions that they really didn't need to bring anyway.
oh, so it's kind of like weighed down. Like you're just like hulking along, just like oh my god, oh my god. Oh, okay.
And that's travel. And also with traveling, there's a lot of stuff that are unknown.
Mm.
especially if we're going to unknown places.
Like
Doing,
directions.
right,
Yes.
we have to
Mhm.
follow directions. We don't know if the bus is going to come. We can't trust anything. I might get
Right.
lost, and I'm carrying all of this luggage along.
Gotcha. I
All
see.
right, so you can see where the whole concept of travel or being in an unfamiliar situation and
Hmm.
having to take on the duties of taking care of a whole bunch of stuff while you're out traveling is a great source of anxiety for
Yeah.
people. And if you don't believe me, go to an airport.
Oh God. Like I remember that feeling when I was traveling to California by myself for a technical interview. And I did not expect that after I took the subway to the hotel was still 20 minutes away from the subway stop. Because in New York City, the subways are really close. In California, I'm like, this subway has like 4 stops. Like, what is this? I got off the subway and I was like, I have no car. Like, how am I gonna cross? And the anxiety that I got when figuring out trying to cross like an 8-lane highway. I looked on Google Maps. I was like, the hotel is beyond this highway. Like, how the heck am I gonna cross it? That feeling, I see now. I perfectly understand. Got it. I understand
Okay,
now.
right, all right. So that's a major source of anxiety. One is food, and the other one is travel and being in a strange situation. A third time it exists is when we know that there's a task to do
Hmm.
that we cannot do right now.
Mm-hmm.
All right, here's
Yes.
an example of it.
Yes.
Every year in January, I've got to go get a new visa. That visa requires a huge amount of paperwork.
Mm-hmm.
But most of the paperwork has to be done within 7 days of presenting that paperwork to the immigration office. So I
Mm-hmm.
can't go to the bank early. I can't go to the hospital and get the health certificate early. I can't go to the landlord and get papers early. I've got to wait and do it at just the right time.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that creates for most people a lot of anxiety. They've got something to do. They've got all this paperwork to do, but they can't do it.
Oh my
And the right
God.
way to do it is just to sit back and say, I don't have to worry about that now. That'll take care of later. We'll do that later. No problem. No, I'm for 3 months before that visa. But you can see that also in work. That's
Mm-hmm.
why the donuts are to be
Mm-hmm.
given out at that point in time when the relief comes from having the job done.
Oh, I understand. Like that feeling of getting like your features done on time. You want to get it done before the boss asks you again. Like that kind of feeling. Yeah,
Hmm.
that kind of like anxiety.
Yes,
I.
so that future time frame, got to do it then in the future, is
Mm-hmm.
another source for that anxiety because it's so
Yes.
future oriented rather than being here now oriented. If you could come back and say, okay, there's no problem right now. I
Mm-hmm.
can't do that visa or I can't do that work now. We got to wait until, I got to wait until that package comes before I can open it.
Oh, I've been lazy. I've been pretty lazy. I haven't done my taxes and all that stuff yet. Oh yeah, I've been pretty lazy on a lot of stuff.
Well, lazy I like.
Yeah. Woo.
Lazy I like. I approve of lazy. Okay? Here's what lazy actually means in this context, and that is lazy is someone else's word for why you don't do what they want you to do. My
Oh,
example of that was my dad wanted me to cut the
okay.
grass, and
Uh-huh.
when I didn't cut the grass, I was lazy. Why should he?
Oh.
He wanted to have the grass cut. If he wanted it cut, why didn't he cut the grass? Why would he call me lazy for not cutting the grass when he's the one that wanted it cut?
Oh, got it, got it, got it. Okay, okay.
Okay,
Gotcha.
lazy is wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
Procrastination is something different.
Oh, is it aversion? Is procrastination?
Has aversion and tension and anxiety built into it that
Mm.
I'm putting off doing that job because I know what a chore it is, but I'm still
Mm-hmm.
thinking about what a chore it is, which means I'm feeling the anxiety of the doing the chore without actually doing the chore. That's
Oh.
procrastination.
And it's like, let me dull my mind or numb my mind with all these other things, like that kind of
Mhm.
thing.
Right. Let
Oh.
me get rid of all of these feelings I have about not doing the job that I don't want to do.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Now,
Gotcha,
here's a
gotcha.
way of handling procrastination, and that is
Mm-hmm.
setting a particular time,
Mm-hmm.
saying, I will do this, like an example of a student who says, I have to do housework on the weekend, and I procrastinate the whole weekend and don't do it. And I said, all right, let's set a timer. At 11 o'clock on Saturday morning, you do what the housework that needs to be done. You take it for an hour, and when that hour is finished, you quit because you'll never get finished. If you start at 11 and you keep working, you'll work all weekend. Don't do it. Just clean for an hour.
Wow, gotcha, gotcha.
Okay? And then before 11 o'clock on Saturday, there's no procrastination. You just say, okay, now is not the time. Now is not the time. Take a deep breath, enjoy the moment. At 11:01, we can say, okay, now is the time to finish. Let's sit down and take a deep breath and enjoy the moment.
Gotcha, gotcha. I
And
see.
so that takes care of both laziness and procrastination, and
Mm-hmm.
both of them are deeply wrapped up with this issue of anxiety or restlessness.
Right.
That
Yes.
feeling something is dangerous, something's got to be done.
Mm-hmm.
And it's such a habit that
Mm-hmm.
we almost have it all the time.
Right. It's
Never
like,
find any rest at all.
it's like you do one thing, it's like, no, you gotta do the other thing, and all. Oh, higher feathers. So subtle.
It's
Ah,
very subtle. Very subtle.
gotcha. So what about things like conceit? Like, how do we start looking out for things like that? I've definitely become
Well,
paying
the
attention.
food, your favorite food, see it then. See it when you get competitive. See it at 5 o'clock when you begin to leave. You've already given yourself all the signs for what to look for, and
Oh,
you'll find more. That's an interesting thing. You ask me a question when you already have the answer.
oh,
Watch. Watch. Keep
that's subtle.
looking.
It's like,
Remember to look.
oh, okay. Because it's like, yeah, I do like pay more attention now. Like increasingly, when I explain something, I make sure that like I don't. Because sometimes, like when we correct somebody, we sometimes like the intention is like half good, half bad. Like part of it, it really is like, let me like, oh yeah, like that, like, it's just wrong. But the other part is just like, okay, let me show you how wrong you were, or it's like you,
Exactly. Uh-huh.
or it's like you hear something and you kind of feel bad about it, like because somebody called you out or something. And you're like, no, 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 no. Like let me show it. Oh, okay. So that's the stuff exactly, precisely what we're looking for.
Many examples. One of them is the condescending church lady. Oh, there. Never mind. You'll be okay. And really, it's very, very patronizing, very condescending. All
Uh,
right. So we can see conceit built up with that because we're taking a superior position to other people.
mhm.
And really, conceit, think about it as a mathematical equation.
Okay.
All right. Except that the equation is not necessarily an equation with an equal sign. Think of all the signs that can be put into that place. Okay.
Mhm.
Greater than or equal, less than or equal, not equal,
Mhm.
equivalent.
Mm.
Okay, not equivalent, etc., like that. The other one is within chemistry is the one that says leads to, which is an arrow.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Okay, for instance,
Mm.
H plus O plus heat
Mhm.
equals water.
Mhm. Mhm.
Okay, so this is a way of looking at it. So let's look at that symbol for a second and recognize what we're really wanting to do with conceit is take that symbol out altogether. No symbol. This
Oh,
is this and that is that, and we're not trying to find some connection between the two of them.
oh, we're presupposing that there was a connection when there wasn't in the first place.
Exactly, and that connection is I'm better than you are, or I'm less than you are. And here's the thing that's really amazing is that both sides of the equation that we're now destroying is extremely complicated. In mathematics, we'll generally try to get it to reduce down to as few elements as possible. But if you're actually trying to find a real ultimate equal, then you want to factor in as many criteria as you possibly can. For instance, comparing two humans. Okay? Think about how many ways there are to compare two humans.
Oh, yeah.
Billions!
Yeah,
okay,
I mean,
so when we do compare ourselves to others, we are doing it very tiny criteria selection process, so that we only select the criteria that we want.
I see.
In order to satisfy the equation that we want.
Oh, okay.
This is conceit. This is mana, which states I am, but the I am is in comparison to something else, in the sense of I am great, or I am small, or I am big, or I am good, or I am bad, or I am evil, or I am, and I am, and I am, and I am, as all this keeps going on with some then adjective afterwards. And that adjective is predicated upon the I am. When we take the I am out, the conceit, when we take the conceit out, then the adjectives don't have a lot of meaning.
So the conceit is in, right, like finding adjectives to reinforce the sense. Oh, it's not the sense of I am, but rather it's the sense of the comparing of the I am to something else.
Actually, it has the quality of trying to define the I am by putting adjectives on it.
Oh, gotcha.
Ooh, who am I is always at the bottom of that question without actually understanding I'm not, or I'm only a human process, and that's all that there is.
Oh, because I mean, now that you talk about this, yeah, I've certainly seen this kind of criteria selection in action in myself and others all the time. I mean, like somebody talks, oh yeah, like he's got this job and so, and then like his salary is such and such, and other people will say, yes, but like he's not as good as an artist as I am. Or like, yes, but like he doesn't, I don't know, play video games as good as I do. And
exactly. Like, and so one side or the other is going to throw in a new criteria to tilt the scale. And then the other one comes back with yet another criteria to tilt the scale back.
I see. So, of course, now...
So where the reality is that people are really not comparable. It's not to be done.
We did it wrong already. So it's kind of like in math, right? You assume the wrong axiom already, so you can prove anything you want because you just...
Yeah, you can put anything you want to on either side of the equation. That's what people do.
So I think I know the answer to my question, which is, so my next question actually. So so this comparison is rooted deep in the mind, and like we talked like several times last time, the way to program the mind to erase this, is to repeatedly catch this when it happens and correct for it and stop and come back, right? This is essentially the way to basically tell the mind, stop doing this, right? There really is no other way. Because I think my question was like, well, I understand all this intellectually, but how do we make the mind understand this faster? But I think there is no faster. The way is...
It's just over and over and over again every time you can see it. At whatever level you can see it, that's the time to say, aha, I see you.
Oh, there is no faster way. You have to do
There is no faster way. Just the skill of sati being developed, the skill of right view and right attitude and right effort and right sati. Those four things over and over and over again.
I think that's the entirety. Like everything that we talk about. It's like sometimes I wonder. It's like this is also useful. How do we make the mind understand this intuitively faster? But there is no way because you have to keep practicing. I understand that. Oh, okay. Guess that's why we kept saying that like the path has to be walked, right? That's why all the Zen masters keep saying that like you need to experience it, you have to do it. Right. Okay. Gotcha. So yeah, let me summarize then, because I think it's getting real late here. It's like 2:30 a.m. in the morning here.
Yeah.
Okay, so let me summarize. So the the thing is, um, basically, right, workplace is basically the next like major area of practice, um, because like that's where most of the majority of the fear and anxiety come up. So of course, I have to remember to take like a really big deep breath when I get up and leave. That's the most important thing. Um, and then to really keeping an eye out for conceit. I think competition. I I I'm very wary of it now. Like when I meet somebody new, I'm already watching myself and see like oh we're comparing ourselves like ooh how's this new person fitting in and things like.
Mm-hmm.
But conceit, yes, I have to pay more attention, right? Like that kind of I am this, I am that, and the criteria. I want to see if the mind is going to do this. I'll probably catch it. Generosity. I can just keep continuing on. Um, and I think that's maybe like sums up like most of the things we've been talking about. With my mom, it's really interesting because you know on Monday when she was in Sanjuka, she was like, "Oh, this is really important," and then now she's kind of like, "Oh, I'm fine, like everything's fine." And I was like, "Oh, interesting," and it's like it was way in the beginning. We were talking about how when people don't suffer, oh, they're fine, but when they suffer, they are forced to seek the protection of the Buddha. And then they come. But I was like, hey, if you're fine now, then all right. Yeah, that's good. Uh, mm,
That's good because what had happened
mhm,
with cultural Chinese from about 1950 to about 1970
mhm.
was during the Cultural Revolution that everything that was good about Buddhism was destroyed along with all of the ritualized qualities of it, leaving
Uh,
the Chinese people with only a vague memory of
um,
what their culture used to be like.
gotcha.
And so that's part of, I think, why your mom is beginning to be interesting is because this is very deep into the culture, part of her life.
Gotcha. Yeah, she has a tendency to think back, like, I guess like to victimize herself. On Monday, she was like, oh, sometimes I think back and it's like everything may have been better if I never married like her father. And I was like, I didn't say anything. I was like, this is prime example of dude like right here, going back into the past
Mm,
and reliving it all over again.
exactly.
I was like, oh, I was like, all right, I was like, so
Yeah.
I
So
guess
the answer to that would think things would be much better off if I stopped reminiscing in the past and thinking that I could have been made a different choice. Let me be happy now with the way things are because we cannot go back. All we can do is feel
uh,
bad about it.
oh, I also talk about marriage and all that stuff. I have been reading a book called. Let me send you the link. I think it's very interesting. It's worth reading. I think if you have a little bit of time. But I think probably what you will when you look at the ideas that the book presents, uh, you will probably say, "Oh, this is stuff I've already know already," because the Dhamma.
What is it talking about it in the sense of psychosomatic?
Yeah, so it talks about adult relationships, like love. And the idea of the premise of the book is so you probably heard of like John Bowlby and his study of attachment theory, like how infants attach to their mothers.
Yeah.
And there are three types of attachment there is the anxious baby, there's the secure baby, and there's the avoidant baby. And this book is saying how actually these infant attachment styles they actually translate into adult romantic relationships.
Personalities, right.
Right, and then they talk about the premise is like, okay, around like roughly 50% of people are secure, the other like quarter is like anxious, and the other is like avoidant. And then they talk about basically why people suffer because their partners are either anxious or you have an anxious person paired up with an avoidant person, which is like the worst thing ever. And I thought it was a really good read. One thing that I got out of it is like, yeah, like it's interesting that like the way they talk about how these attachment theories translate into our adult lives, and of course they also talk about for those who are not secure, how to transition into the secure like attachment style. Now, for me, I tested myself, and I was like, hey, I'm secure. But anyway, that's not the point. And I was beginning to relate to this. I was like, wow, yes, that idea of like, yeah, that to remind myself, yes, I have the Dhamma, that I am a Dhamma dude, that makes so much of a difference in everything, actually. And it is empowering, which I find like really, really nice. And then the funny thing is, I was watching like a joke YouTube video. I'll send it to you too. You might probably get a kick out of this. And I started talking with like a girl. I immediately just like met online. Like the timing was just like really weird. But now I think my perspective has also changed, and I was like, yes, that like I already like just keeping in mind the fact that I already study the Dhamma. It makes so much of a difference. But yes, let me send you all this interesting stuff. Like this is the kind of stuff that like on my free time I kind of read. But maybe it's worth like a read or something.
One thing that I will point out to you, and that may have already been pointed out in the book, and that is that you gave 3 groups with statistical numbers of people in each one of the groups. Here's the problem with that: individual people won't stay in a particular group.
Correct.
We keep moving around. Sometimes we feel secure, and sometimes we feel anxious, and sometimes we.
Yeah, totally. It depends on the situation. Wow, but I was like, yeah, it's a really interesting one. So I'll send you the Amazon link first. I think some of my friends have I have the physical copy, but I think some of my friends have an electronic. So if you're interested, I'll send you like that too. But the YouTube video is like really funny. I think you'll get a kick out of it.
All right. Well, I very much enjoyed our talk today, Willy. And I hope that you get some advantage out of it.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's like every time, like I sometimes I know sometimes I like trail off or something, but I think every time like I really learn like a lot. I think like whatever you've been teaching me, right, it will make such a huge difference. Like it already has like made such a huge difference. Yeah.
Yeah, I give good advice. The problem is, can you remember it at just the right time when you need it?
Honestly, like someday I want to become good enough to actually pass at least some of what we have talked about here to the future generation, because I feel like a lot of people they just don't know that this is so nice, like this will work, but I know that I'm not good enough yet, so I gotta practice.
Exactly. Well, the whole quality is that it's a skill to be developed, and people don't understand that. So they hear good advice, they say, yeah, that's good advice, I'm going to take that advice.
And they never do it.
And then they don't remember to take that advice just when they need it the most.
Gotcha. Okay. So
we have to practice. We have to get those skills developed, the skill of waking up and being here now, so that we can see anxiety and see the tensions and see the feelings.
Okay.
Only then can we deal with them, because we know them.
Okay. And then and then like one more thing. So I remember like a couple. Oh, sorry. Yeah, I just it's really funny. It's like when I'm just talking and there's nothing, and then when I try to leave, it's like, oh hey, do this, like hey, like that. And so one more thing is, so I remember a while back, we had begun talking about like formal readings of some like suttas. Is there any like sutta that you would like me to like read, or anything like just like in preparation, or just to like?
Actually, as more of a review. And I probably mentioned them before, but I've got a set of 3 suttas that fit very, very well together, and that's number 48, number 24, and number 2.
48. Okay, let me just write that down. 48, 24, and 2, right? I remember I had gone through some of them already. Okay,
let
me review them, and I think maybe now I might find something new or something from that sutta. Okay.
Every time you read them, you get something big out of them. All right. The other thing that I would recommend would be anything by Bhikkhu Buddhadasa, and the internet is literally covered with his stuff.
I think now is also a good time to reread the Handbook for Humankind as well.
Yes.
First time I did it.
Handbook for Mankind, excellent.
Yeah.
No religion, excellent.
Gotcha. Yeah, there's probably like a lot of stuff that I just forgot.
Nibbana for Everyone is also really excellent.
Okay, I'll like reread.
Insight by the Natural Method, very excellent.
Oh,
He's got a lot of stuff in there that's really good.
okay. Thanks so much. Okay. Thank you.
All righty. See you. Bye, Willie. And see you
Okay.
next time.
Okay. Bye.